recording. All right, so we are now being recorded. So welcome again to video teleconference number 5 for BIOL 104 YC. This video teleconference is meant as a discussion video teleconference wherein I will be discussing a portion of the answers for the previous homework, and halfway we will be discussing as well modifications of Mendelian ratios in terms of dominance and codominance, incomplete dominance, multiple alleles, and sex-linked genes. So let's look at first our schedule. All right. So we are now in February. Currently, we are supposed to be working on modifications of Mendelian ratios, part 1, chapter 4. And right now, we are currently on track. I hope you've already started working as well on the problem set that were given. If you noticed, I did not open the due date or the portal for you to pass this project yet. I just opened it last night, and I will update you later when the deadline is to give you ample time to solve the problems. All right. So next week, we are going to be talking still more about chapter 4, modifications of Mendelian ratios. And there will be another problem set for that week. And then after that, it's our midterms week. But notice, I actually left the last week of February blank as well in terms of having new lessons. Okay, there are new lessons during that week. So just like in Cell and Mol, I am planning to give you your midterm exam on the last week of February and not on the midterms week. Okay, so we'll have enough time to process things and to be confident before we answer the exam. All right. So in terms of what we've covered so far, we are done with chapters 1 to 3. In fact, we had quizzes on those. Kulang pa ako ng quiz for chapter 3, no? Mendelian Genetics Part 2. But I will be informing you once it's posted. Now, and the schedule for the quiz will be a class time of yours, not anymore on a random day of the week. And right now, we are currently doing modifications of Mendelian ratios, chapter 4. But in my discussion in this video teleconference, I will be covering portions of chapter 3 as well. All right. So, prepare your calculators perhaps or papers. I know I've given you the answers to all of the problems, but I have to tell you there was a portion where I had a mistake, and you will know today where that is. Okay, so let's start with these problems. Problem number 3. So the question here is the production of gametes. Okay, so what is the probability that genes A and
Excuse me,
C?
sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Nawala imong screen sharing, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So it happened again. A while ago, it did happen. Right. Are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, sir. Okay na, sir.
Thank you for your interruption. Okay, that's a good interruption. So here we are being asked, what is the probability that genes A and C can be found in a gamete produced by the following individuals with the following genotypes? We know that gametes will only have half of the allele count, no? Because alleles come in pairs. So for example, the A comes with another A, and the B comes with another B, and so on, no, of the other alleles. So here we are only going to focus on two genes, A and C. So disregard B and then D. Just look at A and C. What is the probability that a gamete produced will be capital A and capital C? So let's look at letter A. So this individual will be able to give either big A or big A or big C or big C. They're the same to that particular gamete. So what will be the answer here? What probability will there be for a gamete to have both capital A and capital C?
100%, sir.
Yes, because for A, look at A, you have no choice. Both of the alleles are capital A. And if you look at C, both of the alleles are also capital C. So certainly all of the gametes 100%, 1 or 100% will have both capitals A and C. All right. So what about letter B? So let's look at the A here and then the C. For A, we have half a chance, right? Okay, we have half a chance. So that's one half for A. But consider C. Is there ever a chance for this individual to contribute capital C in one of its gametes?
No, sir.
None. So that's actually times zero, no, in terms of the probability of a capital C. So one half times zero, that's zero probability or 0%. All right. Next individual, we have a big A small a and a big C small c. So you look at them separately. In terms of A, what chance will there be to have a capital A? In terms of A.
One half, sir.
All right, that's one half. So let me, I was checking if I'm still sharing. So for A, to get a capital A, that's one half chance. Okay, because the other half is a small a. What about for C?
One half.
Also one half, okay, because the other C is a small c and only the other C, one C is capital. So one half times one half, there is a 1/4 chance for this individual to produce a gamete with capital A, capital C. And lastly, letter D. What's the chance of getting a capital A from big A, small a?
One half.
That's one half. And what's the chance of getting a capital C from big C, big C?
One.
All right. So therefore, this individual will have one half chance of producing a gamete with capital A and capital C. So that's really what you just need to look at, the A's and the C's. Okay, don't get distracted by the other letters. Right. Are there questions about this? Okay, so let's proceed on the next one. Okay, so this one, this is where I got the mistake. So please listen, pay attention. Pituitary dwarfism and alkaptonuria are autosomal recessive alleles, okay, with small d and small a respectively. Um, a dwarf man marries a normal woman. Okay, so we have a dwarf man. So if we're going to write their genotypes, we have a dwarf man, small d, okay, because it's autosomal, marries a normal woman. So when we say normal woman, the woman could either have a big D, small d, or let me use another color of ink, a big D, big D. Okay, so that's for the woman. So this is for the man, dwarf, and for the woman, normal. So it's not mentioned there if the woman is homozygous or heterozygous normal. Okay, and then what else? Both are not alkaptonurics. Okay, so in this case, if they are not alkaptonurics, that information, whatever that is, we don't need that in letter A. Am I correct? Because the question in letter A is just about the dwarf phenotype or the normal phenotype. Okay, so leave the alkaptonuric description first alone. So let's answer letter A by knowing these information. Okay, so question. What is the probability that the sibship will consist of one dwarf and two normal children? Okay, so how do we solve this one? One dwarf and two normal children. So we need to first separately get the probability of getting a dwarf child, okay, and the probability of getting a normal child. All right. So there are actually two possibilities here because the mother could either be heterozygous normal or homozygous normal. Okay? So if the mother was homozygous normal, the blue font, sorry, heterozygous normal, blue font, what will be the probability that your child will be a dwarf? Because the father is already small d, and the mother, look at the blue font first, is big D, small d. What's the chance na small d ang child?
50%, sir.
50% or one half. Right, that's correct. Next. What about for a normal child? Okay, let's look at the blue situation first for the mother. For a normal child, what's the chance of getting a big D, small d, big D for the child if the mother has the genotype shown in blue?
%50 yapon, sir.
50%. Okay, so that's 50%. Yes, that's correct. So one half. All right. So let's look at this situation first. Later na yung other probability na yung mother big D, big D. So if we're going to solve letter A using this, okay, we know that there are three siblings, okay, and one of them is dwarf, and the two will be normal. Using your knowledge and probability, this is a binomial probability, di ba? Either dwarf or normal. Two outcomes. So, the formula for binomial probability is first you need to take account the combinations. So that's three siblings taken one. No, because one is dwarf. But take note, 3 taken 2 is also equal to 3 taken 1. So you can have 3 taken 2 because 2 are normal. That's also possible. The answers are the same. Okay? So probability 3 taken 1 combination. Okay. Then the probability that it's a dwarf is one half. no, as we've solved here on top. And that's one of them. One of the child will be dwarf. And the probability that the child will be normal is also 1/2. And that's two of them. Okay? So if you're going to use your calculator, solve this. 3 taken 1 is 3. No? And then 3 times 1 times 1, that's going to be 3 over 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8. So this is the probability of letter A if the mother is big D, small d. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions so far on this? Now let's solve if the mother is a big D, big D. Now, because this is an or situation, big D, small d, or big D, big D. It's not an and situation. So I'll use the red font this time, or red ink. What's the probability of getting a small d if the mother is big D, big D? Look at your father.
0.
Yes, because the father is small d, and there's no choice for the mother to give but a big D. A big D paired with a small d will never get a small d. That's 0%, or zero chance. Now, what about the probability of getting a child that's normal, either big D, small d, or big D, big D? The mother is already big D, big D. If you pair that with small d,
1, sir.
yes, 100% chance na normal ang child if the mother's genotype is this, big D, big D. So 1. So taking this into account, we solve again for binomial probability like what we did. So 3 taken 1. The probability of being a dwarf this time is 0. And that's one child. And the probability of being normal this time is 1. And that's 2 children. But take note, 0 to the power of 1 is 0. And if you multiply that with the rest, that's 0. And this is because an OR situation, 3/8 or 0, this is the rule of addition. You add them. Okay? So you now have 3/8 plus 0. The final answer here is 3/8. So this is now the correct answer for letter A, number 4. So the answer that I gave to you is wrong because I think I multiplied 8 by itself. So naging 3/64. 3/8 ang answer dapat. Okay. What about letter B? Okay. This time, ang letter B, the difference is it's now in sequence talaga. The first is dwarf. You don't have a choice. So no more combinations here. And then the rest will be normal. So this is actually quite simpler to solve because there's no combination anymore involved. So we do the same method that we did here, but without the combination. So the first child is a dwarf. That's going to be 1/2 chance for that first child in case of the mother being big D, small d. That's first child. And then the other 2 children will be normal, and that's 1/2. And then there are 2 children. Okay? So we now have 1/2 to the power of 3, which is 1/8 chance if the mother is big D, small d. Now, if the mother is big D, big D, that's going to be 0 chance of being a dwarf and 100% chance of being normal. But since the other multiplier is 0, this is just 0. And since this is an OR situation because of the mother's situation, When we add this, the final answer for letter B is 1A. Okay. So are there any questions about this? I did not include letter C, but you can solve letter C based on the concept that we have here. So binomial probability really comes in handy with this. Now you need to remember that one. And if ever you did not take biostat last sem and you already forgot, I think you really need to review on binomial probability because it makes things easier for this. All right, next. So this time we have two trihybrids that we are crossing. You can have a big A, small a, big B, small b, big C, small c. We cross it with another trihybrid. Okay. What is the probability of producing plants with at least one recessive trait? Okay. When we say one recessive trait, at least one of these pairs of alleles should be both small letters. Okay, so that's the meaning of that. Okay, so there are several situations. You can have a plant with only one pair that are both small alleles or recessive, or you can have a situation wherein two alleles, two pairs are small alleles, or you can have all of the alleles, all small letters, because the question is at least one recessive trait. Okay, so we have to take those all in account. So first, let's start with just one recessive trait. So that's three genes and then one recessive trait, one small allele. Okay, so if we take this in account, we have 3 taken 1. Okay, and what is the probability of getting a small letter in any of these genes? Let's say you have big A small a times big A small a. What's the probability of getting a small a here?
1/4, sir.
1/4. Okay, so 3 taken 1, and then that one has a 1/4 chance. That one has a 1/4 chance. And what's the probability here of getting a big A small a or a big A big A?
3/4.
Okay, so you have here 3/4, and in this case, that's 2 of them. Okay, so if you use your calculator for this, you have 3 times 1/4 times 3/4 squared. I already have it solved. So the answer here will be 27 out of 64. That's only for this situation 1. Now, so we have to include 2 recessive traits. So in 2 recessive traits, you now have 3 taken 2 at a time. And your recessive incidence will now be 2 instead of just 1. And your dominant incidence will now be will now be 1 instead of 2, because there are only 3 places. Okay. So if we multiply all of these, 3 taken 2 is still 3 times 1/4 squared times 3/4. The answer here will be 9 over 64. And finally, what if all of the genes, all of the traits are recessive? So that means all of them will have a 1/4 chance happening, and there are 3 of them. So 1/4 to the power of 3. That's 1 out of 64. So these are the possibilities. But these are actually, what is this, an OR situation or an AND situation? Anyone? Can you have one recessive allele and at the same time have two recessive alleles or recessive traits?
No, sir.
No. So this is an OR situation. So it's either 27 over 64 or 9 over 64 or 1 over 64. Therefore, addition rule, add all of them. And if you add all of them, since they have the same denominator, that's just 27 plus 9, that's 36 plus 1, that's 37 out of 64. So that's the answer for number 7. Okay, so I think correct yung nabigay ko na answer dito. So only in the previous question was I wrong. Okay, and then there's this. Okay, so we need to answer this as well. So in sesame, a pair of genes determines the number of seed pods per leaf axil. Okay, you have a plant with one pod and wrinkled leaf. We don't know, by the way, which one is recessive and which one is dominant. And then you have with one pod and normal leaf, and you are crossing them, or you are breeding them. And the offspring are the ones that are listed here. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video teleconference, the way you analyze this is you look at the traits one at a time. So first, let's look at the pods. Okay, let's look at the pods. How are the pods being inherited here? So look at the numbers. One pod and one pod muna tayo. Okay, one pod and one pod. If you're going to sum all of these, by the way, this is going to be 360. Okay. But look at the one pod and one pod. 129 plus 138. What is that number?
Two 67.
All right, so that's 267 for the one pod. Okay, and then let's look at three pod, 42 plus 51. What is that number?
$93.
93. Okay, now ratio. Okay, let's talk about ratio this time. 267 divided by 360 divided by the total. What is the answer? Anyone? 267 divided by 360.
74.16, sir, or approximately 75.
75. 3/4. Now we know that the pod's inheritance follows a 3:1 ratio. Ba, alam na natin kaagad. Okay? And which one is dominant? One pod or three pods?
1.
Okay. So therefore, we can now have, let's say, this will be T, no, for three pods. So capital T will be one pod, and small t will be for three pods. Okay, so got that. Next, let's look at our next trait. Okay, the leaf, normal or wrinkled. Okay, so first let's look at normal here. 129 plus 42.
171, sir.
171. And then what about wrinkled plus wrinkled? 138 plus 51.
189.
189. So let's look at ratios. Try dividing 171 divided by 360. What is 171 divided by 360?
47.50.
Approximately 50%. So we can say the leaf is a 1:1 ratio. And which one seems to be dominant? Normal or wrinkled?
Most likely normal, sir.
Look at the number of normals, 171, wrinkled 189, just based on numbers. Which is dominant? Wrinkled.
Wrinkled.
Okay. Yes. So therefore, we will use n for this. No, normal will be small letter n. And wrinkled will be capital letter N. Solved. Okay. What are the genotypes of the parents? Look at the first parent. I'll underline in green. One pod, wrinkled. Okay, so one pod. Meaning to say this first parent must have a capital T. Okay. And the second parent is also one pod. So there must be a capital T as well for the other parent. Okay. And then wrinkled yung first parent. So there must be a capital N somewhere there. But the second parent is normal. So this must be small n, small n. Diba? Okay. Tapos, let's look at the T's now. Look at their offspring. Okay. What is the appearance of, what is the ratio? It's 3:1. It follows what ratio? What cross of Mendel's? 3:1. Anong cross yan ni Mendel? The most basic one. What hybrid cross?
Monohybrid?
Monohybrid cross. So monohybrid to for the T. Okay, so monohybrid cross yan. Okay, and let's look at the leaf ratio, 1:1. So the first parent cannot have big N, otherwise all will be wrinkled, no, in the offspring. But it's a 1/2, 1/2. So this must be a small letter N. So we've answered letter A. Okay, so these are the genotypes of the parents. So propose a hypothesis. That's our hypothesis already. That's letter B. Okay, according to our hypothesis, letter C, what number would we expect each of the 4 classes of progeny? Okay, so in order to answer that one, let's try to number our progeny here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's look at progeny number 1. What's the probability of getting one pod from big T, small t, big T, small t? Monohybrid cross, one pod. 3/4. No, so 3/4. Okay. So progeny 1 tayo ha, the one with the number 1. What about normal? What's the probability of getting normal? Based on the parents that we have. Normal is small n, small n. So what is that probability?
1/2.
That's 1/4. You say 1/4? It's not 1/4 because this is big N, and small n, small n. It's not a monohybrid
One
case.
half, sir.
1/2. Okay, so that's 1/2. So if we multiply these, 3/4 times 1/2, that's 3/8. And if you're going to multiply this with the total progeny 360, you're gonna get a number of 135. So that's what you're expecting for progeny 1. So let's do the same for 2, 3, and 4. So for progeny 2, 3-pod, what's the probability in a 3-pod? Based on the monohybrid cross that we have here, big T small t times big T small t.
One fourth, sir.
1/4. Okay, that's 1/4. Times, what's the probability progeny number 2 of being normal? The same as progeny number 1, obviously. So 1/4 times 1/2, that's 1/8 times 360. So we're expecting actually 45 of progeny 2. Okay, next, for progeny 3, 1-pod. Same as progeny 1. Okay, nandun na yung answer sa progeny 1. So that's 3/4 times wrinkled. Oh, so what's the probability of wrinkled for progeny 3?
Half gyapon, sir.
1/2 gihapon. Okay, so 1/2. So we have 3/8 here times 360. So this is 135. And then lastly, you don't even have to solve for number 4 as long as the total is 360. This is going to be 45. Okay, so that's your expected number. So please take note of that because we will move to the next slide and we will need that 135, 135, and then this number over here. So let's test the validity of this. In order to test the validity, we need to use chi-square test. My question?
Oh, yeah. Hindi.
Go ahead. Any questions?
Ah, sorry, sir.
Okay, so let's now test through chi-square test. No? So I need to show this to you. So ang chi-square test will be observed minus expected, tapos we square that, then divided by the expected. Okay, so our observed will be progeny 1, 2, 3, 4. That will be observed natin, nakasulat na 129, 42, 138, 51, minus expected, the one that we solved a while ago, 135, 45, 135, 45, and then we just square each of these. No? And then divided by expected, divided by 135, divided by 45, divided by 135, divided by 45. Okay. So what will be the answer here? Now, for the sake of speed, okay, I've actually solved these already, and you can try solving there in your own as well. So this is 0.27. This one is 0.2. This one is 0.067. And then the last one is 0.8. And then to do chi-square value, you add all of these. Our chi-square value is 1.337. So remember that chi-square value is 1.337. Okay, so let me move on to the next illustration. Okay, so in terms of deciding if our observation or our theory is correct, since our chi-square is 1.337, no? 1.337. So here's the x-axis, 1.337. Choose a red ink. And then degree of freedom, we had 4 criteria minus 1. So degree of freedom is 3. So you sort of interpolate this with the degree of freedom na 3. And that's somewhere here. Okay. And then interpolate it here. Okay. This portion that is dark in color, okay, is accept. Okay, we accept our null hypothesis, meaning to say there is no difference between the actual and the observed values. So therefore, our theory here, back to this one, the parents, our theory is correct because our actual result, theoretical result is no difference or no different from the observed results. So you have your chi-square here. So for some of you, you might be overwhelmed by this. Just continue practicing the problem again and again until you understand it. And then we have modifications of Mendelian ratios. Okay. Modification because the ratios are not anymore the monohybrid or the dihybrid cross ratios because we have what we call as incomplete dominance and codominance, in both of which the ratio for the phenotype and the genotype are similar. And what is that ratio? For incomplete and codominance, what will be the ratio for genotype and phenotype? Shown here at the bottom, so you can see. What's the ratio?
1:2:1, sir.
All right. So remember in a monohybrid cross, like this one, okay, you will have here 2 heterozygous. You have here 1 homozygous dominant and 1 homozygous recessive. In terms of genotype, that's a 1:2:1 ratio. But in the classical Mendelian sense, big A and big A small a will appear to be the same. Okay, because it's complete dominance. So the phenotypic ratio here is 3:1. But in incomplete dominance and codominance, the big A is distinctly different from big A small a, so that they will still appear separate. So the 1:2:1 ratio for the genotype is unchanged for the phenotype. No? So an example of incomplete dominance will be sort of the mixing of colors, no, of the flower color of the snapdragon plant, as you can see here. Red and white are actually, there's no term as recessive or dominant here. So notice the use of letters is not anymore capital letter and small letter. Okay, there is already a sort of an exponent, no, superscript written to indicate the particular trait, but no use anymore of capital or small letters to indicate that there is no recessive or dominant allele, but they are incompletely dominant. The example for codominance that has 2 alleles would be the MN blood type in humans. So this is the presence of the carbohydrate on the red blood cell of humans, for example. So if the genotype is, let's say, both M, then the phenotype is definitely M. But if the phenotype if the genotype of the individual is a combination of M and N, both will be expressed separately in the individual as a phenotype, and the phenotype will be MN, okay, because neither is dominant to the other. And if the genotype is N and N, then the individual will will surely have an N phenotype. Okay. Following a ratio again of 1:2:1. Okay. So, and then alleles can come in more than just two alternative forms. They can come in three. There was an example in the book in Drosophila. There can be thousands of alternative forms of the allele for the eye color. Okay, so an example here in humans will be the allele for the ABO blood type. Okay, indicated here as capital IA for the allele for type A, capital IB for allele for type B, and small letter I for allele for type O. Now, the alleles for A and B are codominant, no? And that's the reason why when they pair together, IA and IB, they are both expressed together because they are codominant to each other. However, the small I allele for type O is recessive to both A and B alleles. Thereby, if you pair an A allele with an O allele, I, small letter I, the person will still be type A. Okay? And if you pair an O allele with a type B allele, the person will still be type B, not BO or not AO. Okay, so it's sort of an interplay of dominance here. No, so there's A and B codominant, but both A and B are dominant over O. Okay. And then there is even a curious case of what we call as the Bombay phenotype, wherein a woman from Bombay was found out to actually not have a type O allele, no, in her genes. Um, but the reason why her phenotype is type O because she lacked an enzyme that would actually attach the A and B antigen onto her red blood cell. So despite having the A and the B antigen present in her genes, these cannot attach to her red blood cells because she lacked an enzyme that will help them attach. So she seems to be a type O, but when she married a type A male, no, as shown here, their children were either AB, A, or B. Okay, so where did the B come from when the father is type A and the mother is type O? Turns out the one with the Bombay phenotype was carrying the B allele with her, but it cannot be expressed in her because she lacked the enzyme. And then there is this experiment by Thomas Hunt Morgan on fruit flies. So he bred female fruit flies with red eyes, with male fruit flies with white eyes. The F1 generation, regardless of being male or female, all had red eyes. Seems like it's following Mendel's rules. However, when he bred the F1 with other F1s, it produced a 3:1 ratio phenotype in the end, but all of the males, okay, or all of the fruit flies with white eyes were males. There were no fruit flies with white eyes that are females. Okay, so the explanation for this is the gene for eye color in fruit flies is somehow attached to the chromosomes that dictate maleness or femaleness, no? Particularly in the X chromosome. So as you can see here. Okay, so take note that males in the fruit fly will only have one X chromosome from the female. No, so If he cross the parent generation here with each other, it will come up with the F1 generation that's shown here. So you have a female that's a carrier of the white eye color, but it cannot be expressed because the red eye color is dominant, which is also the wild type, meaning to say it's the most rampant character or trait in terms of eye color. And the males here are also carriers because they have an X chromosome from the mother that is for red eye color, and so they express the red eye color. But then when the males from the F1 are bred with the females from the F1, this one emerged. Okay, look at this male. It has one Y chromosome, the one that looks like a hook, and one X chromosome that has a recessive allele, small w, which indicates for white eye. So because that doesn't have a pair to counteract its phenotype, this male will express white eye. But there's also one female, as we see here, that's a carrier for the white eye allele. Okay, so this is sex-linked, no? So we have specifically X-linked genes and Y-linked genes. So that's in humans, but there are other systems. No, in insects, there is an XO system of the chromosome system. In birds and in fishes, there's a ZW and a ZZ system. So this is found in your group work as well. And in bees, for example, all of the males are haploid and females are diploid. Okay, so I think we can end there because we are running out of time. Okay, so there's just this last illustration. We see here the inheritance of red-green color blindness in humans, which is actually a recessive X-linked trait. Okay, so meaning to say females will not be color blind. Look at this, unless they get a double dose of the recessive allele, which is found in the X chromosome. But males are twice as susceptible to color blindness because they only contain, their cells only contain one X chromosome. And if that X chromosome happens to contain an allele for color blindness, then they will become color blind. So sex-linked genes will sort of complicate the Mendelian ratio, the results. So, homework due date. Okay, I'm sorry I had to rush through that one. But I feel like it was more important to discuss the answers to the problems. Homework for due date and quiz on chapter 3 is now Wednesday next week. No? So not today, not on Monday, but Wednesday next week. So you have ample time. It's also fair for you, and you can still answer confidently those items, as a pair. The quiz will also be next week, Wednesday. So I will be posting that as well, and I will open it on that day. And again, our midterm exam is on the last week of February. So any concerns, questions? We talked about a lot of math here a while ago. So our brains might be a bit stressed right now or fatigued. I'll understand that. But guys, with practice, you will really get better, no? Okay. If it's your first time hearing those, of course, your head will hurt. But if you practice again and again, you will get it. And that's really part of genetics, no? Probability is a prerequisite in understanding Mendelian and beyond Mendelian genetics. Any questions or concerns? You're overtime by 2 minutes. I'm sorry about that. Do you have a class after this?
None, sir.
Wala ra, sir.
Sige, so questions. Think. Huna. Because it's better if we answer it live, di ba? Kaysa we will just type in e-learn. Just a reminder, di ba, I had a wrong answer, the one that I sent to you, so please correct that one. I'm sorry. My answer that I showed you today is the one that is correct. Number 4 in the problem set. No questions? Okay, so practice makes perfect. The book has a lot of problems and also has answers at the back. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. No, mag-practice kayo sa problem and then look at the answer at the back. And of course, if you have more questions that you want to address to me, just message me in eLearn and I will reply right away to you. Okay, so walang questions sa quizzes, exams, coverage of exam. What's the coverage? Coverage will be Mendelian and non-Mendelian ratios. Chapters 3 and 4. Exam type, multiple choice with one answer per item. All right. So wala nang magko-question. Thank you very much, guys, for bearing with the discussion. Just study and you will become better at this. And I hope you will have a productive day ahead. So there's still more than half of the day left. And keep safe. And since there are no questions, you are now all dismissed from this class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.